Welcome back to Square Off. 200,000 Arizona voters need to fix a mistake that was made by the state 20 years ago. But there are urgent questions about how many of them will fix that mistake in time to cast a ballot next year. Joining us now, Jen Fifield, the Arizona elections reporter for the nonprofit votebeat.org. Jen has been on top of this story from the very start. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thanks for having me on.
So take us back to the start. About 8 months ago, elections officials discovered that these 200,000 longtime voters had never complied with a state law that required them to show proof of citizenship to register. It's not their fault, to be clear, not their fault. Take us back. How did that happen?
Yeah, so the state was not tracking for anyone who got a license, driver's license, before 1996. They didn't have to prove their citizenship when they got that. The state coded them as having provided citizenship. And that's where it all started. We found this out. We've been doing it for 20 years. It's going to look completely random who comes up on this affected list because of how long and who's affected.
Now, these are longtime voters. A majority, I believe, are Republican.
Yeah, well, the majority of them, yes, yeah, but all across the spectrum.
Okay, so that was discovered kind of the result of a 2004 voter-approved law, the proof of citizenship law. What happened after that discovery? Because it's been 8 months almost.
It has. So the Supreme Court, the Arizona Supreme Court said, don't do anything before the November presidential election. We do not want to disenfranchise before that. And then after that, it was kind of like the court didn't say what to do. So now it was up to the Secretary of State and the county to decide how to move forward, how to deal with their registration and when to send them letters. And now we're just seeing counties start to send out letters to these voters.
And this is where things get kind of complicated and kind of worrisome. Secretary of State Adrian Fontes was on the show last week. I asked him about it, and he said he can't do anything. It's up to the 15 county recorders to come up with the way to tell the voters what to do. So do we now have 15 different sets of instructions for voters?
We do, depending on how to prove your citizenship, how to send it in, and when to send it in, and what it means if you don't send it in before your next local election. It's not even the 2026 election. We have a November election in Maricopa County, for example, where they're going to have to solve this between May and then.
And what are you hearing from county recorders? Are they just freelancing this?
Well, they've been discussing it, and they've been trying to get more firm guidance from the secretary, but he really has provided options for how they deal with it. And now they're making their own determinations with their county attorneys. This is a legal issue for how you deal with it, and it's being done differently across the state.
And I think you've reported that some letters are going out in some counties to voters. How are those letters being received?
Well, they are very confused. I mean, these are people like, everyone's lived here before 1996. I'm hearing from a lot of 60-year-olds who have born and raised here, who just, the trigger is you move across county lines and you have to re-register, but you have that pre-1996 license. So these are longtime Arizona voters, Arizona residents saying, why in the world am I being asked to do this right now?
And I think you reported some of those folks are wondering if this is even junk mail.
For sure, and with all of the rhetoric on non-citizen voting, they're thinking maybe it's a Republican ploy to try to kick them off the voter rolls, not understand that this is just a state issue that's affecting everyone across the board.
And it's a legit concern because we all get letters during elections about our own registrations. I feel like I've seen a letter like that.
We have gotten junk, like you said, junk mail that's fraudulent, telling us to re-register to vote or something's wrong. So it's very confusing.
So you've given us some of the guidelines for who these folks are. What can they do if I think I'm one of them? What can they do to get right, prove their citizenship?
Secretary of State does have a website you can go on to search your voter record, and it should be flagged under your status that this is a problem that you need to provide citizenship, hopefully. Other than that, look for your mail. Look for mail on this. I mean, really, it's so random that everyone needs to pay attention to their voter record before their next election.
So check that out. And what happens if they cast a ballot, say, next year without having proved their citizenship or tried to cast a ballot?
And that's something that different counties might do differently too. If you show up at the polls and you don't have your documentation with you, who carries around a birth certificate? The way that they refer them to the recorder's office to fix it on that day, everything is going to be different across the state.
Now, the legislature might do something to clarify this, to create at least one set of rules, for example, for the deadline for fixing this? Where does the legislation stand?
There is a Republican bill that would say if you do not provide this by 2026, by that election, we are going to remove you from the voter rolls entirely.
Remove you entirely?
Yes, the Secretary of State's office says, I don't think so. That's not what the court meant to say back in back in September when they dealt with this. And that bill received a little bit of traction. It's slowed now, so we'll see if that even happens. Either way, it creates an uncomfortable situation for counties.
And creates a very promising situation for election lawyers. It seems this is ripe for a lawsuit in some fashion.
It definitely might. We might end up there very soon.
Close race, all these voters, you can see it.
You can.
We have seen it. All right, got into it there. Jen Fifield, great information. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.